It feels a little bit like I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, which I'm not. Reliving the 2016 World Series title, but it's been my dream to watch the highlights of the worst people in the world breaking down over election night. So please join me as I mock and ridicule these brainless invertebrate as they call the 2024 election.
I mean, I will say from the raft of undecided voters and just people out in the world that I talked to in battleground states over the course of the last few weeks, everyone's focused on women. Everyone's focused on the gender divide. Everyone, Michael Steele mentioned the quiet vote, the notion that women are going into the booth and pulling a lever that's different from the lever their husbands are pulling. That was a direct appeal from the Harris campaign. But also,
yes, be disloyal, break up the marriage, because voting for a DEI hire is more important.
This phenomenon, and there's a great piece in The Atlantic today by Elizabeth Froning about what wives want and what married women are going to do, because traditionally married white women have given their votes to Trump in the last two election cycles. Does abortion change that calculation? Are women who are married seeing their fates tied more to women elsewhere? Is this a moment for, I guess, not to be heavy-handed about it, but sisterhood? Can abortion unite women in states where abortion access isn't threatened to the fates and risks faced by women in states where abortion access is threatened? And I think that's a huge question. It's going to, in many ways, maybe even determine the outcome of the election, how women see each other in each other's shoes. To practice, those undecided voters who are making game time calls want to vote for a winner. And it's, I really think
they really did vote for a winner. White women favored Trump.
This is unscientific. Yeah. But the last week has been a very good close for Kamala Harris, not a good close for Donald Trump. He hasn't been able to fill the rallies. He's addled. He has racist comedians opening it. Whatever. It's been a trashy week for Donald Trump.
Racist comedians joking about Puerto Rico's trash problem, which they literally have on the island. Meanwhile, Joe Biden calls Trump supporters garbage. They forget to mention that because they're just propaganda.
It's been a very strong week for Kamala Harris. And if you're sitting there in the line thinking, I want to vote for the person who has a W at the end of their name after this is all over, that's a good thing for Kamala Harris.
Tired people, but I feel very good about where we are, that's for sure.
As we in Wisconsin, 8 college campuses in Wisconsin have 1 to 2 hour lines as of midday. And the campaign is tracking what this means. They're saying that in some of these places, the turnout is already at 100% with the 2020.
Hey, in Democrat strongholds, it can get to well over 100%. Let's not forget about that possibility. Likelihood.
Numbers are. So that means that they're cautiously optimistic.
A change in the characterization of the race in Georgia. It had previously been characterized, the presidential race in Georgia had previously been characterized as too early to call. We're now changing characterization to too close to call. So again, it doesn't mean that we're anywhere closer to a result, but I wanted to get that in while you continue your exposition of why we feel that way.
I'm going to give a couple of everybody take a breath warnings here. Okay. One is DeKalb County is not in Georgia because of the extension of the poll hours. That is such a big county for the Democrats. We don't know what's going to happen in Georgia. I would also just reiterate, maybe you've also said this, it's like a baby blue state, I'm going to say, and that it has not been blue for a long time. It is a hard state for the Harris team.
Georgia. Just joining us right this second at 8:52:06, and I had to summarize what's going on. No surprises. Pretty much that's what's happened thus far. There's been no surprising result anywhere, I don't think. Now, that doesn't mean that said, the no surprise result for the presidential race will be, it's really tight, we don't know. And that could be true for a very long time.
The turnout thing, to your point.
Friends are saying it's very tight, and they don't want to make predictions, but people are hesitant to say, but they are encouraged. They're encouraged by what they're seeing in Detroit specifically, like in all of the other battleground states, by what they're seeing on the college campuses. Those cities with large college campuses, the college students, they are in formation.
Broad national polling about, exit polling about Harris's strength among Latino men, and they seem to be breaking.
Yeah, Latino men, Harris's strength. Trump won Latino men. Keep with the propaganda.
Or Donald Trump, which is a very big difference from 2020 when they broke for Joe Biden by, I believe, 23 points. They may be breaking for Trump by as many as 10 points. Again, this is early.
Aspects of what we're talking about, that people need to just calm down. When you're running against history, guess what?
That charlatan used to be the head of the Republican National Committee. And for the money, naturally, he switched over to propagandizing for the Democrats. This is just demonstrative of how corrupt and superficial politics are.
Hard hill to climb. And I think there's a lot more game out there, so just relax, y'all.
Everybody simmer down. That's a message from the Insider Studio. Back to you guys in the main studio, Rachel.
Thank you, Alex. Coming up on 9:41 on the East Coast right now, heading towards 10 p.m. poll closings. At this point, we've got no swing states called. We've got Trump doing well in terms of his margins in the two southern swing states that we've got the most vote in, North Carolina and Georgia, as Steve Kornacki has been portraying it. We've got no surprises really anywhere unless you want to count the Florida abortion measure falling short of here with a call. NBC News has projected a winner in the presidential race in the great state of Ohio, home state of vice presidential running mate to Donald Trump.
Yes.
Donald Trump is projected to be the winner in the state of Ohio. And no surprise there. Ohio used to be like the prototypical swing state, just like Florida. Neither of them considered to be a swing state anymore.
The one place that at least the folks I'm talking to in the campaign are looking outside of the blue wall and paying really close attention to it, and they'll be watching whatever Steve Kornacki does, is the Georgia suburbs.
She is so heinously ugly inside and out. How does she maintain her job with her racist statements that are continual?
Because that is where they're seeing overperformance for Vice President Harris is in the suburbs of Georgia. And if she overperforms Biden in 2020 in the Georgia suburbs, that is where they see the one place to do sort of a reach state. Because again, Georgia's a reach state. I know it's now got 2 Democratic senators, but it's still a reach state for presidential.
Let me check. I don't have a call to make here, but we have a change in characterization in a couple of very important states. In the Pennsylvania presidential race, the previous characterization of this race had been too early to call. It is now too close to call in Pennsylvania. Similarly, in the Wisconsin presidential race, this had previously been too early to call. In Wisconsin, it is now too close to call.
Margin will be. I know we've called it for Trump, Ohio, but the rest of them, everybody's feeling really good about. And I'll tell you one other thing that people are feeling really good about, baby. Rachel, that is what they're seeing on college campuses. This is going to be big in Pennsylvania. It's going to be big in Michigan. It's going to be big in Wisconsin. And everybody needs to take a deep breath. Those are the 3 states we need. Don't have to have Georgia. Don't have to have North Carolina. We have to have those 3. And they have been surprised. The campaign has been surprised.
We don't have very many more poll closings, right? We'll have poll closings at 11 and 12 and one at midnight, one at 1 a.m. But we're not watching poll closings essentially for all the news right now. We're watching for any one of these swing states to close in on something cold.
Let's be blunt. I think when you watched what Donald Trump did in 2020, what Democrats were fantasizing about was a landslide victory.
What your whole network was fantasizing about, what your whole job was to provide for the donors and for the businesses that advertise with you, like Big Pharma.
Wouldn't be able to peer at a red mirage and falsely claim victory. And so some of what was wanted and desired was a sweep that in a 50-50 country where the final best poll had her +4 nationally really didn't, the data suggests.
That one was accurate. Propagated by your network, no doubt.
So that something that would disallow Donald Trump to claim victory before the results were known, that really wasn't on the table. We live in an evenly divided country, and it creates anxiety, but it also requires patience.
It's also, I think the reason there's so much anxiety is that I think, and I've gotten a fair number of these texts, I'm sure you all are as well, it is fairly shocking. And I don't think it's something that should make us super proud that despite all of the things that just we've seen in the last 2 weeks, even if you could somehow forget January 6th and an attempted coup to overthrow.
The attempted coup where people forgot to bring weapons. That was the attempted coup as you frame it.
The country, even if you could forget taking classified documents and hiding them in your bathroom, even if you could.
Like Joe Biden did, like Mike Pence. And Joe Biden's were far more serious because he didn't have the ability to declassify them when he was vice president. Those are the documents he took. But go on, keep your Trump derangement syndrome. Keep dividing the country.
Set aside, which is very hard to set aside, an adjudication of sexual abuse against a woman, and then 24 other allegations. And Jeffrey Epstein saying was his best friend, and you name it. You just think about just the last 2 weeks and the things that Donald Trump has said into the TV that people could hear him say and do, the vulgarity in front of families with young children, and the threats to do mass deportation and a violent start to his dictatorship on day one, and name it.
The dictatorship. Yes, he's joking about being a dictator for one day on day one. Yes, and you frame it that he wants to be a dictator, and this is what you tell the whole world, and all of the nut jobs that then think that it's within their right and necessity to assassinate Hitler. That's what you've given us, you whore.
If all of that gets you half of the votes,
48, 49%.
What does it tell you? I mean, we need to really take a step back and think about what does that say about us?
And things are starting I would say to come into focus because it's later, but we still have not a single swing state call.
Yeah, one thing I will just say, I'm not trying to be rosy all the time at all, but this always happens on election nights where the bigger cities where Democrats have the bigger share of the vote come in later. And there are a lot of places, Grand Rapids, Michigan, a bigger chunk of Philly, Dane County in Wisconsin. We don't know what they'll be, but we got to wait and see what they are before anybody starts drinking on their couch or whatever they need to do.
They're already doing that.
They already do. We've got 2 early to call in North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and it's 2 close to call in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
I mean, blue wall, baby. There was always going to be a blue wall.
Night. We got to go to the blue wall. We're going to sit on the blue wall, and we're going to open up with some peppermint schnapps on the blue wall, and we're just going to pot it because that's the key to holding back the dictatorship of Donald Trump.
And I think that I tried to speak a little bit to some of the fantasies, right, of a landslide victory that would erase any doubt, that would eradicate, the.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you. Your little fantasy did not come true.
The threat of something drawn out. And that is, I'm so loath to quote Don Rumsfeld with all of you, but I will anyway. I feel like Liz Cheney has made that somewhat acceptable again.
Still not acceptable.
You go to the polls with the country that you have, and the country we have lives in 2 totally separated information ecosystems. Whatever happens, we'll have to really
Yes, your leftist, elitist bubble where you do not see the travails of the majority of the country and how hard everybody has it as you preach to them as to how racist they are because they don't want somebody hired just because they have a darker color of skin. The definition of racism.
Understand the information consumption that young men have and why they think that the economy will be better under Donald Trump when it never was. I think that waiting for the...
Nothing good ever happened under Donald Trump. The fact that there were no new wars was not within his purview. Gets no credit for it. No, not with MSNBC.
These blue wall states to come in because they're so close, because households are divided, right? There could be a yard sign in a house that doesn't represent how everyone in the house will vote in either direction. And so I think it's going to be a late night. And I think it's the polls. I mean, I guess a slice of good news that the polls have accurately captured this dead heat.
We all know that one.
It went from landslide, where you are going to win handily, to it's a dead heat. You can see the air starting to get sucked out of the room. It's beautiful.
We don't know who's going to win Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which means that when you actually put aside a lot of the energy and the understandable emotion and commitment, we are in a similar place than we were a few hours ago. I have seen people start to jump on trends, but we don't know who's going to win those states. If Kamala Harris wins those states, then she would be in a path to win the presidency.
Room here just for a moment that I just lost my IFB. And so I am now one of these people who's speaking but can't hear anything.
You can tell me and I'll tell you.
So go ahead. So if control room is saying anything to me right now, I think my battery's died, so take it away.
Go to Steve.
Rachel, you seem so energized.
But I do know actually nobody talking to me that we do need to go to Steve.
But
yes.
Steve.
Yeah. Okay. Did you just turn to me?
Yeah,
oh, God.
It was me.
Somebody was talking to me. I apologize. Here we go. Some more returns in Pennsylvania. As I gather my train of thought here, I wanted to update you on.
MSNBC senior contributing editor Michelle Norris. She's at Harris election night headquarters at Howard University. Michelle, what are you saying?
Hey, Rachel. Well, the crowd here is still large, is still loud, but a little bit more subdued. And the word that I keep hearing, it must be some new phrase that's entered the lexicon, is the idea that people here are nauseously optimistic. Not just cautiously optimistic, but nauseously optimistic. And so, people here are watching and they're wondering what's going to happen in Pennsylvania. They're ready for a long...
Spoiler alert. You lost.
Long night. And one of the reasons I've heard also is that they wanted to inject so much joy into the beginning of this is because they knew. That's why they brought the DJ in and the dancing and the line dancing, because they knew that this was going to be a long night and that it was going to be a real nail biter. And it appears that is exactly what we're looking at right now.
Michelle Norris. They are enthusiastic about what those votes are going to say. And they are, as Michelle Norris noted, nauseously optimistic. People are nauseously optimistic. They're clear-eyed. And people within the campaign and then strategists surrounding the campaign have all said to me within the last hour, we have been clear that it was going to be close. Now, folks may not have believed that given the energy and the momentum, but the campaign itself and the folks specifically very close to the campaign have always been clear that this was going to be close.
Dial it back. Dial back the propaganda. We're winning in a landslide. We're winning by a good amount. It's going to be super close. I love to see the air going out of the room. It's beautiful.
They believe Pennsylvania is still in play, and I do also think that it's my understanding of they have a sense of that the reality is that Georgia is not an option for a win this go round, and North Carolina is not looking like it as well, but folks need to wait and see. Wake County, rest of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina will make a difference. Wisconsin, I will note, folks in Wisconsin say they think it'll be a classic Wisconsin photo finish, but they feel good about where they are.
Sources about the results in Michigan. What are you hearing, Michael?
Yeah, it's very interesting right now that a number of the folks that I've been talking to there in Michigan, Republicans are looking a little bit, how should we say, skeptical of holding Michigan for Trump right now, looking at some of the numbers that are.
Who did you talk to? The one person that claims to be a Republican that is in fact a DNC operative? Is that who you spoke with, knowing so, and then you frame him as a Republican the same way you do all of your reporting? You shill, you hack.
Been coming in. I know as we still have big centers like Detroit that are going to land, but the reality on the ground there, they have a lot of hope in that they look like they will flip the House to the Republicans, but may give some ground to Trump. They're still looking through some of the numbers, but it's a little bit up in the air for the Trump hold on Michigan. So
we now have an NBC News call in the first one, Joy. North Carolina called for Donald Trump.
Yep, and so it was, it's a state that I think Democrats definitely were reaching for. There was a lot of work to try to turn out the college campuses, which were really thick and really packed, and try to turn out the suburbs. And I think there was a lot of hope because of just the insanity, can we say fairly, of the person who's running for governor in that state, and a thought that, defeating him would also carry Harris in. But in the end, if they didn't make their numbers and essentially exceed the numbers that Joe Biden had in the suburbs, and I think we have to be blunt about why. Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not.
Yep, you should definitely vote based on race. That is, if you defy your racial expectations, then you're a traitor to the cause. This is the modern day Democrat Party. That's why I left it.
That message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to.
We should vote for somebody because they are the same gender as us, because they are the same sex. Absolutely. From the party that can't even define what a frickin' woman is.
Change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, God bless Shannon Watts who's tried to have that conversation. But if people aren't receptive to it, and if people vote more, party line or more on race than on gender and on protecting their gender, there's really not much more that you can do but tell people what the risks are. And
yep, definitely racism. You guys have outlined the risk, dictator on day one, the fine people hoax, all the lies. Donald Trump it was going to be a bloodbath. Yep, you definitely told us the risks, and it's really up to us to believe you and to vote accordingly, especially if they're the right sex or race.
Leave it to them to do the right thing.
Stop. People didn't have the Montana Senate race. I think if Democrats, obviously their pie in the sky view of these Senate races was that like Florida was within reach against Rick Scott with Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, and maybe Texas was within reach with Ted Cruz versus Colin Allred. Now I think that we're down to figuring out what the Republican margin is likely to be, honestly.
Yes, and one of the
for the Harris campaign to offer or do. They delivered a very strong economy, and they put a plan forth for one going forward.
No, they spent tons of borrowed and printed money, raised inflation, and they call it, because the nominal GDP number is up, that the economy was marvelous when you just have an inflationary number that raised GDP. The number of goods, products, and services that went out to Americans did not meet what you claim was a fantastic economy.
And what Donald Trump has offered is only going to worsen the economy.
And also, so I was fighting Claire McCaskill about 2 hours ago, but what I'm hearing there, again, as Steve Kornacki just told us at the big board, there were a number of votes, absentee ballots that came in this latest batch, lots from Philadelphia County. The lead,
come on, keep the hope alive, baby.
That needs to be insurmounted is not insurmounted. May not be.
Is that a word? Insurmounted? DEI hire cannot speak English. You are an anchor on the network. Hey, but you're the right skin color, so we're going to hire you versus a capable person.
Surmountable, but it may be mountable. But they're cautiously optimistic. Now, cautiously optimistic. Yeah, as the asteroid hurtles towards Earth, I'm cautiously optimistic. Still additional absentee ballots out there. I don't know if there. I don't know exactly how many are left out, but I can tell you, I personally don't think that there are enough. And that means if there were not enough, I want to be honest with people, if there are not enough absentee ballots out there to make up the gap that currently exists for the Harris-Walz campaign, the vice president will not win Pennsylvania. And if she does not win Pennsylvania, Donald Trump then hits 270. Now,
oh God, no! Oh no! Oh, you DNC shows, start crying now. I'm crying with you.
Pennsylvania people are saying Allegheny County, that's Pittsburgh, right? Lehigh Valley, with the Puerto Rican vote, there is still a chance. And then some of these
Let's not forget about the cheating vote that you guys tried to gain. You were trying to count illegal ballots post-election to make sure that it came in for you. Gee, I wonder whether or not that happened in 2020 when you didn't have everybody looking over your shoulder.
And in the collar counties outside of Philadelphia, but the numbers, the margins, because this is an election about the margins. Yeah, the margins have not been large enough in the state thus far. But again, there's still some votes out there.
We are still in it. We've been talking, Claire, about Michigan and Wisconsin, and looking at those two states.
What started out as a hopeful sense that maybe we could knock off Ted Cruz and maybe the independent candidate in Nebraska, while not caucusing with Democrats, would deny the Republicans a seat. Now we're looking at whether or not I think the Republicans end up with 51, 52, 53, or 54 seats. And why is that so important? Well, one reason it's so important is because it probably means if this all happens, this is very depressing. I'm sorry to do this to everyone.
Oh, it's depressing. Give me my SSRIs. Oh, it's so sad.
But it means maybe the worst instincts of Donald Trump as to who he would appoint to the cabinet can become real, because there wouldn't be enough people.
Like Democrat RFK, lifelong the blue blood of the party, like him, to go after health and to try to combat the nepotism and the corruption that exists between the pharma industry and the government. Yeah, I can see why everybody should be crying. Give me my SSRIs before they make them illegal. Go for a walk, people. Do some stretching. Go for a run. You won't be depressed.
That would say no. I have to interrupt my own train of thought to bring you a call. For the second time this evening, NBC News is able to make a projection in a battleground state. NBC News now projects that in the battleground state of Georgia in the presidential race, Donald Trump has prevailed in the presidential race in Georgia. So again, of our swing states, we've got two called thus far in Georgia and in North Carolina for NBC News. That puts the electoral map at Donald Trump with 246 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris at 189 electoral votes. To make, NBC News can project at this hour, and this is a big one, that the Republican Party will control the United States Senate. Now, what tipped this over, we have eyes on Howard University right now. We can tell you that Vice President Harris is not expected to speak tonight, but we are seeing quite a crowd there. And
I do know that there was a lot of handwringing and consternation in her camp about when she should leave, about when she should start to head here. And her victory party, which was in another part of town, at what point they turned off the TV set.
Victory party? They really planned a victory party? What a waste of money. What fools.
Hyped up the music because the room was starting to get increasingly somber. So a lot of people here, I haven't had a chance to talk to people who express disappointment. There really is still a lot of people who are holding on to hope, trying hard to hold on to hope. But the numbers, it's hard to do that in the face of a map that really looks like it's presenting a very steep challenge. And a country that at this point is still very divided.
And to be clear, Michelle, NBC News has called 2 of the 7 swing states. They have called Georgia and North Carolina for Donald Trump. They've also called Senate control for the Republican Party. 5 swing states remain to be called. But as you say, the internal map, which we have been following with Steve Kornacki, the wins in Georgia and North Carolina have created the mood that you're describing. The last thing that we have reportable from the Harris campaign, but Trump declares victory, all these things that everybody gamed out. Now we're just waiting for the blue wall states to come in and watching the math. Sending people home is also like asking people to conserve their emotional energy.
And it's not possible. I think there's no other way to describe how people are feeling leaving that venue and people on the campaign than deflated in this moment. Yes, all of the other states have not been called. But what they went to that venue tonight hoping to see and witness was a historic election of Kamala Harris to the presidency, was the end of the Trump era as they knew it. And so we don't know the outcome yet, but that is not what they are receiving. And they are being told to go home and wait till tomorrow. That's just...
It's not looking good. It's not looking good, my fellow Democrats. I I'm so sorry. I'm so depressed.
It's a hard thing to hear. People who have worked across the country because they believed in Joe Biden, and then they're like, we're here for Kamala Harris. We believe in this. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for abortion rights. All of those people are also sitting deflated and waiting at this moment, and maybe still hopeful too. But I've been thinking a lot about them as well, because it's been quite a 200 days for them. As well.
Or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it, cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And not
because it's all racism. It's not the fact that she can barely complete a sentence, that she has an IQ of well below average. We will say that she earned everything via DEI, and that she's completely unlikable and also a weak candidate.
Thing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now.
Flawlessly.
I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign.
They didn't make a single mistake. They didn't go on Joe Rogan. Actually, that was a smart move, because she would have bombed.
Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed.
If I had only known that Queen Latifah had endorsed Harris, oh my God, I think I would have switched my vote. That would have been huge.
She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift, the Swifties.
That she paid for, $2.5 million to Oprah, 1.6 to Eminem, 10 million to Beyonce. Yeah, you can get a lot of cred when you hand out cash like that.
She had the Beehive. You could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true. And I think that the other piece I think is really important to say to people, because this is where it gets dicey, is that the fact that we now have to wait for more vote to come in, that is how the process works. There is an absentee ballot that needs to come in, and it must be counted, because those are also legitimate votes. This is where we get into that point where Donald Trump can do the thing Donald Trump does, which is to say, I like where we are right now. And anything that changes that, because there is still a chance that the absentee ballot, that the remaining ballot could change what's happening now. And so
you can bring a whole stack load, 100,000 ballots in the middle of the night, pre-printed, pre-filled out, drop them off. That would definitely change things. Kind of what might have happened in 2020.
We need to be really, I think, vigilant and important in telling people and reminding people that until all the votes are counted and there's an actual call made, we don't have an outcome. And people going home at Howard, my concern would be that it feeds a disinformation, sort of doom loop that could be exploited by those who've been exploiting this campaign. We've had Russia, someone maybe with a Russia, VPN, or maybe in Russia calling in death threats.
No, it's definitely Russia. Russia's the reason that Donald Trump is going to win. She's right.
And those death threats were going, let's be clear, to minority, Black, and indigenous counties. Bomb threats. Sorry.
Bears repeating. We are counting all the votes and following the facts. We are not in a race to get the facts. We will follow them, and they will come when they come. We are not in a prediction contest. We're not in a probability contest. We're not in a is your needle right contest. We are going to do that. So that's number one. And what we just saw from the Harris campaign looks like their expectation is more pessimistic than optimistic. We didn't see them bring out a real fire breather who's acting like, hey, give us a little more time. We got this. It wasn't a long speech. It didn't even, and Jen can speak to this as can everyone on the panel, it didn't sound like a battle plan of here's the next 36 hours. It sounded more pessimistic. And on the flip side, and I don't mean this as an insult to Donald Trump, although it is.
Oh, what? You guys aren't going to insult Donald Trump for the first time in ever?
Negative observation. The only time he's quiet and talks about things being fair is if he thinks he's already won. When it's uncertain, he accuses everyone of cheating and undermines people's trust in this, which is unfortunate. And when he's losing, he's...
No, the MSNBC has never been overly critical of Donald Trump, never presented false information about him. This is a first. I mean, oh my goodness. I'm just shocked by MSNBC.
The loudest, and we all were at this table late night last cycle when we know in the end he lost, and he came out and did that. And so I just want to observe, and I'm sure many other people can add insights to this, that the Harris campaign sounds like that. And he is as quiet as we've seen him.
I think that's exactly what we're all about.
We shall see. I think the Democrats were hoping they'd do so well they'd expand the map to Texas and Iowa, and they didn't win either of those either. At this point, we've got 2 of the 7 swing states called. They are North Carolina and Georgia, both called for NBC News for Donald Trump. We're still watching the results come in all of the other swing states. We're heading toward a 1 a.m. closing in Alaska. That'll be our last poll closing of the night. Steve, as we're heading toward that, what are you watching?
I'm watching Pennsylvania because now we've inched over 90% of the vote in, and Trump's margin now has moved over 200,000 votes in Pennsylvania. That's a 3.5 almost point advantage for Trump.
In the event that you would have another Trump term, you then have, You then have
ongoing returns in Pennsylvania. Steve, are we at 94% in Pennsylvania? Is that what I'm saying?
Yes, we are. It's 94%. Trump's lead here at 190,000 votes. That works out to about a 3 percentage point lead. It is a very significant hill for Kamala Harris to climb here.
Ooh,
just in terms of what's left, the picture is really kind of condensing and clarifying.
Our coverage of the presidential election. It is 1:52 a.m., which means we're obviously at our best. At this point, 2 of the 7 swing states have been called by NBC News. North Carolina and Georgia have both been projected as having been won by Republican candidate Donald Trump. Now, on the Democratic side, the campaign that had posted up at Howard University in Washington, D.C., the alma mater of Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, the co-chair of the campaign, Cedric Richmond, came out and told the assembled crowd there, as our correspondent told us, as Michelle Norris told us, the increasingly somber crowd there told them basically to go home, that Vice President Harris would not be making any remarks tonight. Fawn Hilliard, thank you very much. I would be interrupting you if you had not just concluded your remarks, because NBC News has a projection to make in the presidential contest in the swing state of Pennsylvania. NBC News now projects that presidential contest has been won by Donald Trump. Now, I believe that means that we are at a 266 electoral vote count.
It's like watching your favorite player hit a grand slam like Freddie Freeman did this year in the World Series in the bottom of the last inning. It's just fantastic. That's what I feel when I hear them say that. Oh my God, and the other team's deflated.
For Donald Trump, Kamala Harris had 194 electoral votes. So to be clear here, this is the third of the 7 major swing states that have been called. But Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, as those 3 states, presents an almost it presents an insurmountable future here for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic ticket. In terms of what's going to happen, Chris Hayes, with the projection in Pennsylvania, we pretty much know how this is going to end.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I think the writing has been on the wall. And
no. You can still come back. You can still win. You can win all the other swing states plus Alaska. You can do it. Don't give up the hope.
You know, one of the jobs that we all have in the media is to be truthful with people and transparent. We're very transparent about the problem.
He's joking, right? Coming from MSD and seeing what he just said, that they're truthful, that's their job, to be truthful. Your job is to shill and propagandize for your paymasters. That's your job. Whoever's doing that is who you propagandize for. Honest. Best joke of the night goes to Chris Hayes.
Process that brought us to this point. I'll just say this as we're preparing for Trump to take the stage. Steve was going through the numbers. We have this very funky. It looks possible that Donald Trump might emerge with a popular vote majority when all the votes.
For a long time.
We won't know for a long time, but this is not outside the realm of possibility. The Electoral College looks strongly in his favor. And if that is the case, if he has won the election, then he has won the election. And the reason I say that is because we've spent many years talking about democracy, vibrancy, and the importance of the peaceful transfer of power. We've had a violent insurrection staged against the constitutional order by the man we're expecting to speak.
Yes, an insurrection. They've repeated that line so many times. I think that some of those pea brains might actually believe it.
Here, who urged his supporters to march to that Capitol, where they assaulted police officers and attempted to
march peacefully and patriotically.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
He says that they're trying to be honest, but of course, hey, that's just an overlook. It's not that we're dishonest. We just intentionally overlook it every single time and try to frame things in the worst possible way.
Essentially steal power away from the majority of the country that had voted for Joe Biden. It's really important to note that while I believe that institutions have failed dramatically in putting us in the position we are, including the Supreme Court and other institutions, the Republican Party,
it's the institutions,
that if he won, then he won. And that's what the Constitution says. It's what our current constitutional order says. It's what Democratic majorities, at least in the swing states, Electoral College, have said. And that means we're in a new world for this country, but the sort of preservation of American democracy and the constitutional order begins as an ongoing process anew tomorrow.
Steph, go ahead. Kamala Harris. So Donald Trump, at this hour, Donald Trump has 266 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 204 electoral votes. The speech that Donald Trump just gave was essentially a victory speech. At this point, NBC News has not projected a winner in this race.
Nope.
Obviously, a commanding lead for Donald Trump with victories in the swing states of Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania. But he does not have 270 electoral votes. As I just mentioned, Minnesota has just been called for Kamala Harris, and we continue to watch the still outstanding swing states and a few other non-swing states that remain outstanding. Alex?
I mean, I just say to Donald Trump and the people around him, good luck having Bobby Kennedy as your HHS secretary, an anti-vaxxer running the country.
Not anti-vaxxer. That's a slur. That's a lie. That's the media being honest with us again. He just wants the vaccines to be tested properly. Anti-vaxxer. You guys are the ones who declared that it was wonderful that the vaccines would be mandated to 5-year-olds who didn't even contract the disease and have harmful effects to their body, and that it would prevent transmission, etc. So F you, Alex Wagner.
3 years after a deadly pandemic that created mass death that you, Donald Trump, grossly mismanaged. Good luck doubling down on fossil fuels and a fossil fuel economy at the precise moment that the Earth is heating up to historic proportions and monster storms supercharged by climate change are laying waste to red states. Side note, Democrats cannot.
Oh, yeah, it's red states because, climate change, it only affects those stupid enough to not believe in it and not follow your stupid edicts.
Not control the weather. And good luck to you, sir, with your sales tax that's going to raise taxes, a tariff that's going to raise taxes on middle and working class income Americans. Good luck to you with all of it. It feels like the dog that caught the car.
This cliche before, but it's a central one, which is that the future is unwritten. And the thing that we often do analytically is we see a dot here and a dot here and we draw the line out through like that. And I have never felt more of wide openness about what era we are entering into than I feel right now, even particularly watching that speech. Because I don't know what we're about to step into. The only thing I'll say is that I do know that the country that existed before tonight is the country that we have right now. And that's what matters, is all the other stuff that isn't Donald Trump and which group of his homies are up on stage at any given moment. And that's what we had on Tuesday, and it's what we have now on Wednesday morning.
And I would, East and Donald Trump is poised to clinch the presidency. Thank you so much for staying up late with all of us. I'm Jen Psaki here at MSNBC headquarters in New York, taking in what we know now. We don't know everything. There's still more votes to come in, but based on what we know now.
So, there's a lot of stuff inside of my head that wants to rage at this, but then
what else are you hearing from the campaign? What do we expect that to look like? Do we know more about what those plans are?
Those are all key questions that I'm asking people. Some of them are already asleep, so we might not get those answers to earlier today in terms of the details of when the vice president will speak. But we do expect her to speak today later at Howard University. And I want to just walk people through what the Harris campaign and really the people that are close to her have been like in the last few hours. They really did start off the night thinking 8 p.m., 9 p.m., sounding very optimistic, very confident. The vice president had been saying that she had the momentum. She was telling supporters in rally after rally that she believed she was going to win. And I was picking up on that.
Another great prediction by Kamala Harris.
Cautious optimism. But right around 10 o'clock, 10:30, when it was clear that former President Trump was overperforming in places that were critical for him to win, including specifically in North Carolina and Georgia, I started to really sense a real shock and a real anxiety and a real worry from the Harris campaign and Harris aides. And that really just got darker and darker in terms of sort of their mood. At Howard University, people started to really have blank stares. They started to not be celebrating and dancing as they had been at the beginning of the night. And then later on, as it became clear that Donald Trump was going to be even closer to 270, especially after he won Pennsylvania, I started getting text messages from Harris aides who started pivoting, not from talking about whether or not she could still pull this off, but talking about how they would deal with the second Trump presidency. One aide telling me that he believes that he's going to try everything to try to push back on these policies, but also try to figure out a way to love the people that he disagrees with. So it's really interesting. Of course, the vice president hasn't conceded. NBC hasn't called this race yet, but we are in this situation now where Harris aides and people close to her are definitely making the move toward how are we going to work with the Trump administration? How are we going to deal with these policies? So I think it's just really interesting in these wee hours in this morning that is, of course, a Wednesday morning. There are a lot of Democrats that are waking up shocked, or that are going to bed shocked, but are also sort of dealing with the reality, which is that they expect Donald Trump to be the president of the United States come next year.
I've been thinking a lot about all those campaign aides who've been through it.
I love the kumbaya at this end of the table. I don't think the country gives a damn about that. I think you're going to, I've been looking at a lot of the stuff on the various platforms, and there are a lot of self-satisfied folks out there who are just loving rubbing it in right now.
Oh, yeah. Especially because y'all are douchebags and liars, propagandists, and the only thing you do is divide the country. And you, sir, are a turncoat who went for the bucks. Yeah, it's your right as an American, but don't put on this air that you're such a wonderful, principled person because you're anything but.
So how do you get up and heal the country when a significant portion of them want to put salt in the wound? Easier to pull away from.
I'm sorry, did you not demonize Trump supporters, call them the biggest threat to the republic while Islamic terrorism is taking place? While the border is wide open, allowing them in? How many terror attacks do you think that we're going to see over the Trump presidency? I predict way too many.
Cliff, we just went over. I mean, and that's the reality of it. We just elected a man who said he wants to be a dictator. He wants to change the Constitution.
That's the right framing. That's the right framing. Joking about doing it for one day on day one so he can drill, baby, drill. Yeah, that's the way. That's why we trust you. The media giving us the truth, right?
He wants to, do all these other things with the federal government, and the country said okay.
Things, very specific.
By a big number. So that's the space we find ourselves in. And how does she then go out and address
swing states and with Donald Trump on the verge of victory? I want to take just a look at some of the exit polls and what we're learning from him, who is continuing to crunch numbers. I saw him writing things on a notepad. That's always a sign of something. What have we learned, Steve?
Well, it's a development that's not in the board, but that I can tell you about that's crucial. Look, I think we know where we're going here. It's just a question of how we're going to get there in terms of this 270 electoral votes to officially make Trump the president-elect. We've talked about
the popular vote, because this is a part of the story that for many presidential cycles, Democrats have been arguing, I have said too, that the Electoral College should not be the prime determinant of the outcome. But this is looking...
Well, that's good because Trump won the popular vote. Biatch.
Different than what many would have expected. Weeks ago, days ago, whatever, maybe. Where do we stand at this point in time?
Yeah, it is. I preface it by saying it's going to be long.
Steve Kronak, I just have to jump in. And you've been predicting this. We've been waiting for it. And we do have some breaking news from the decision desk. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president.
Let's do the Trump
dance. For so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest.
It's
I
wonderful
understand
to
that
digest.
Personally. After he lost 4 years ago, he refused to accept the outcome of violent insurrection on our nation's capital. He's campaigned while facing criminal indictments related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 results, and he's run as a convicted felon. During his campaign, he has also promised to essentially be an authoritarian leader, to use power like no American president ever has before, and wield that power to go after his political enemies. This is a man who's also bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade and stripping away women's bodily autonomy. He's promised to conduct mass
Rage harder, biatch. Tell us more about all the propaganda that you've uttered over the last several years, the negative aspects of our country that you dredge up and instill fear into your watchers. And this is MSDNC at its finest, by the way.
Deportations to crack down on the rights of millions of Americans. Donald Trump is an anti-democratic force. But he's just been elected.
Not like Kamala Harris and John Kerry and all the Democrats, including Hillary Clinton, that want to take away free speech, that censored you when you wanted to talk on Twitter, that told you that the Hunter Biden laptop last time was Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation. Yeah, go on, biatch.
Democratically in our country. And here's what might be the hardest part to hear, but we have to talk about and we have to say, and it is a hard part to digest for all of us. But we have to be honest about what we saw in this election. Donald Trump was elected by expanding his support over a number of key groups that we've been digging into this night, all night tonight, as we anticipated where this was headed. And I know we're going to dig into it throughout the course of the day today. And there will be a lot of time spent on how and why he won and what this will mean for the country over the next 4 years and beyond. But in this moment, it's also important to remember that our democracy is not built around one person or one job. And I have every confidence that pro-democracy forces in this country will continue to stand up and make their voices heard. That's what we saw after 2016 as well. Some of those voices will be governors. Some of them will be elected officials. Some will be institutions. And
you mean the Russia hoax and all the fake lies that you created and tried to torpedo his presidency and tried to impeach him? You mean like that?
Organizations standing up for rights and standing up for women's bodily autonomy and standing up for our climate. Some will be citizens. And many of you sitting at home right now digesting this news right now, some of them will be you. I wish I had better news for my daughter later this morning. I know Tim Miller and I were talking about this earlier when she and so many others wake up to this news. I wish I could have called her and told her that the first woman president had just been elected. I wish that. I won't be able to do that. But what I can do, what I can tell my daughter, and what I will tell my daughter, is that our roles as American citizens have never been more important than they are right now. I can tell her that there are still lots of good forces out there, forces for good in this country, and that they are going to be getting to work. We have to sneak in a quick break. Okay, I'm going to come back to the table right now.
That was a wonderful event. And yeah, I do want to rub salt in their wounds, considering the fact that they declared all Trump supporters were the biggest threat to the republic, to the democracy, that they tried to jail their opponents over and over again, that they weaponized the Department of Justice. This is a sweet dessert, and our republic now has a chance. The Democrats would have torpedoed our freedom of speech, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching MSDNC thrash about and deal with the reality that Trump was elected. If you like this video, please thumb it up and subscribe, share it with a friend. Peace. God bless.